So almost 2 years ago now, I made this video about modernizing Synchronet BBS command shells, and really I was just going over the updating to most modern Baja version of some old shells, and I think I used, the Oblivion 2 shell. In this video, I promised to come back with a tutorial about how to actually rewrite Baja shells in JavaScript for current versions of Synchronet, which still support Baja, but it's definitely something that's more and more obsolete and deprecated. I haven't done that. It's been almost 2 years now, so I feel bad. So that's what this video is going to be. I was looking at what shells there are that come with Synchronet. We got Wildcat, Clone, WWIV, Renegade, PCBoard, Major BBS. I think those are the main ones as far as clones go, and there's some other shells that are like one-offs, but PCBoard seemed like the right one. It was smaller in code size, and it's a very popular BBS program. I've been kind of on a PCBoard kick lately, adding a lot of these macros or codes, I call them, that PCBoard supported and we did not. So been adding some of those and making sure that the color codes work as expected everywhere. PCBoard has its own color codes also with the character. Right, so that's what this is over here. This is the PCBoard command shell written in Baja. It's this horrible programming language I created in about, I think, 1992, 91, something like that. And it hasn't really been updated much since then. It was like one big revision to like version 2 of Baja, but just a few minor things changed. Not all of them backwards compatible. I covered that in the last video. What I'm gonna do now is take this and convert it to JavaScript and sort of walk you through that process. Just so if you're not clear exactly, how Baja works, it's interpreted, but it's compiled. So you don't exactly execute this directly in the BBS. This gets converted to a binary file that, through lack of imagination, I call .bin. And so you have a compiler called Baja, and then you would type the name of the file that you're compiling, PCBoard, there we go. So it just compiles it. It takes this code here and compiles it to this .bin file, which is then executed on the BBS. Normally you pre-configure that, the sysop does, so that it's available as an option for the user, and that's done through the SCFG utility, command shells, and then PCBoard Clone. And all you do is put the internal code in there. It takes that as the base file name, no extension or anything. It assumes it's either .bin or .js. .js takes precedence, I think, so if there's a .js version, it'll just run that. Ideally, you don't have to change anything here. We wouldn't actually change the configuration. It would still be available as a command shell for users, but we want it to run the JavaScript version. And JavaScript does not require compilation, right? So we don't have to, it's automatic compile. It's actually compiled before it runs, but it's done behind the scenes. You don't see it happening. So you don't have to run a utility like Baja to convert it to some other format before it's usable by the BBS. So some helpful references as part of this process. We're going to want the Baja documentation because that'll remind us exactly what all these words mean and do. We'll want the JavaScript page on the wiki. We'll want the JavaScript object model reference. This object model reference is for version 3.20, the latest release. Just as a quick little tip, if you wanted to see the current documentation for the current development version, which is 3.21a, I think, you could go to nix.synchro.net/JS.obj.html. And you see up here the version now is 3.21b, and I guess that is the current version. I thought it was A. I guess it's B. And that's supposed to be the next release, in fact. So we'll be incrementing that after the release. Anyway, there are some differences, but we want to make our shell still run with 3.20. So I'm pretty much going to be abiding by this reference, making sure that it's backwards compatible. We can even test it. I've got a version of 3.20, but I'm not going to be doing anything too fancy. I think everything will probably work even going way back to like version 3.16 or earlier, maybe even. First thing I'm going to do is going to save this file as a .js file, and it won't be runnable that way. I'm going to say save as a copy. I'm using Notepad++ here. I'm just going to say PCBoard.js. And just so we're aware, so what it looks like and everything, I'll go ahead and put it in here. So this will be running, it automatically tried to run it. All right, so you can see that it's trying to run it. That's not going to work. It's not valid JavaScript. It's complaining on line 1 about an illegal character. Here's line 1. That's not how you do comments in JavaScript, but that's not exactly what I wanted to demonstrate to you. Let me see here. I'll just go ahead and delete that first. I wanted to show you what the actual current Baja PCBoard shell is. So it starts off, got the little splash screen. That's new, different. That's cute. This sysop, your sysop is the space for rent. That's cute. It still says version 2. I guess we'll fix that as part of this process. And then you just get this prompt, and question mark I think brings up the menu. It also supports expert mode, so it just automatically gives you. And there's no separate file menu or message menu. I think it's just pretty much all here. So we don't have a whole lot of menu files. You see bulletins. That just takes you general text files, mail. Yeah, most of the submenus are just going to be built-in stuff. And that's kind of how it was with Baja. Like, let's take one of these functions, for example. So reading messages. You know, this stuff's like just kind of hard-coded built in. If you had a configured module for reading messages, it would automatically execute that. You know, a lot of these functions on here just go like directly to some built-in BBS function. Let me see if there's an example. So like system information. Okay, so like we'll look at that, for example, in the Baja source. I thought it was key S. Oh, stir, because these are all string commands. You have to enter. So it'll be like stir S. Make that not case sensitive. I've got a dialog on the other monitor over here. There we go. So it just calls info system. Info underscore system. We looked at in the Baja documentation. It says this function displays various system information. So once it calls this function, like it no longer has control. You don't really have ability to customize or do much. You just kind of, you know, this script sort of jumps into that function, and then until you quit out of this menu here, which I guess it doesn't have any prompts or anything other than that one with the yes, no, but then you come back to control of the script itself, and then it does an end command, which ends up jumping back up here. But you can see here we have, it's all string input. There's no hotkeys. I don't know if PCBoard supported hotkeys. But apparently I didn't think it did when I wrote the shell. So everything you had to hit enter after every command. Open is how you go to doors. Chat for the chat menu. News, it's probably, I don't know, runs a bulletins program or something. W to change your settings. And that's where you'd choose a new command shell, like going back to the Synchronet classic command shell. And that's how we're going to test this. We're going to actually test it using the sysop command ;exec. And then you can just put star or question mark and then the module name. And then this will execute the shell. And then I think there might be a way to exit out of the shell from here. Maybe not. I'm thinking, yeah, once you're in here, there might not be a built-in way to get out. I think, actually, wait, if I look at the sysop menu, see, help. Normally there's a help. So we should put that in. We should put in the help commands, the string commands that you can normally do stuff with, but they're not here. And there's no sysop menu. So really lacking in functionality from this shell. It's not a great shell for a Synchronet sysop to use. Users, if you have users that are familiar with PCBoard and they want to use the shell, great. They probably don't need most of the string commands, but there's a lot of string commands that are very helpful, and we should probably fix that as part of this process of converting to JavaScript. Also have it execute this other shell, which is called stir commands for string commands. And that's how we can do a lot of these things like exiting the shell, because we're kind of trapped in it now. I can't really get out of here. Maybe if no, because that's already in a shell. Yeah, I pretty much have to log off, I think. There's no way to like cause this thing to exit or return. Yeah, you're just kind of in an infinite loop of these menus. So if I just hang up and call back, then I'll be back to my normal default shell. And that's another thing we're going to be looking at is the default shell, because that is going to be our template sort of to follow of how to convert this to JavaScript. All right, so I'm going to go back to doing what I did, and that was save as a copy, PCBoard.js, and that's the file we want to open and edit. This is the JS. And granted, this is not valid JavaScript, so first thing we want to do is go through and maybe just convert all the comments, all the lines that start with that. We want to convert to that. Those are the only comments. What this at format thing does is if you have an editor that supports it, or if you have a plugin, it'll automatically set your tab size and force it to use tabs when it saves. I don't think I have that enabled in Notepad right now, but some editors, like when I use Vim, it automatically abides by those rules. So let me see this whole bang include SBBS defs inc. That's not how you do that in JavaScript. Instead, it would be load SBBS defs.js. And next thing it's doing is displaying a menu. And if you need to know what these things are, again, we have the Baja reference. So this explains how the bang include works. Its purpose is basically pull in some other code into this script. It's kind of like inserting it. Now we want to look at this menu function. And there's lots of use of the word menu. Here we go. It's menu and then a string. At least that's how it worked in Baja. You have more options in JavaScript, but you then give it a path. When this documentation was written, we only supported DOS. So of course backslashes, but forward slashes work fine. This code's been updated over the years to use forward slashes and lowercase. There is a history here in GitLab of all the changes to this file over the years. Of course, like I said, it started, I don't know when I created this, maybe in 1992, 93, something like that. It wasn't put into revision control under CVS until 2000, still 26 years ago. So it's gone through some very minor changes since then. And some of those include like converting backslashes to forward slashes. But we can't directly just call menu like this in JavaScript. There's a function called BBS menu. So under BBS methods, functions are methods, or methods are functions, however you want to say that. And then we're looking for menu. Here it is. This is how you call it. You give it a base file name. So that's pretty much the same, but we need quotes and stuff. So we'd say bbs.menu, and then you'd say open parentheses, because that's how you call functions, and then pass the path. And that's basically a subdirectory of the text menu directory. So if we look down here under text menu, and then you'll see there's a subdirectory called PCBoard here. And then we'll look in PCBoard, and you'll see there's two files, boardm and welcome.asc. And if we dump those files, we can tell that it's Control A encoded, not PCBoard color codes. That would have been a little more with the style and the theme, but I think initially I didn't support PCBoard color code, so I probably just converted this from ANSI to Control A format using something like ANS to ASC. The ASC file extension is also a little bit of a legacy. But it'll work. This should work, at least initially. And then if this did have PCBoard color codes in it, then we could, if we wanted, pass a mode and say PCBoard. Now that's actually a version 3.2, Synchronet version 3.21 feature, so it wouldn't work with 3.20 anyway. And we're not using PCBoard color codes. These are all Control A codes, which are just native to Synchronet, so we don't need to do that. All right, this command home, that's kind of setting an anchor point. It's like a label where we say we're going to loop for a menu, and this is the home. It's always going to come back here when you hit I think it's end command. It loops back to command home. And again, if you search in the documentation, you can find description of how that works. We're not going to need that necessarily. Instead, we'll do something like while not JS terminated. That means like the server was terminated. We want to stop these things. And BBS online means the user's connected. Then we'll do these things. We do all the menus and stuff, right? So that's how we have a loop. Looking at the default shell, again, I said that's probably a good reference. It probably has a similar loop in it. These are just data, tables, while BBS online and not JS terminated. So it's the same concept in a different order of those two things. It doesn't matter, but we use the same name and everything. Okay, and then in the top of our loop here, it compares access requirement strings. That's what ARS stands for, or access requirement system if you prefer. And it's saying, does the user have the expert menu mode turned on? This will work. There are better ways to do this. ARS is a bit heavy just to check the expert flag. The preferred way to do that instead would be to use user. It would be a setting for the user, so user property. And then I think it's just settings, right? And they're bit flags, and they start with user underscore. So this would be like something like this. So if user.settings and user expert. And really it's saying if it's not set, because here it's checking if false. So it did a compare and then it's saying if it's not. So we would use instead the exclamation mark, not operator, logical not in JavaScript. And we're going to say if it's not set, then we're going to do a clear screen, and that's console.clear, I believe. That clear screen could be built into the menu file. You could also have like an at code or control A code that even embedded ANSI if you want to be dirty. In this case, we're not depending on the display file to clear the screen. We're doing it with code in the script, and that's fine. It's just if you didn't want that, then you'd have to modify the script. But since we're emulating PCBoard, and apparently it always cleared the screen according to this script, we'll continue to do that the same. And I just wanted to sort of go back to the documentation and confirm that it's console.clear. It might be clear screen, something like that. Yeah, console.clear. And optionally, you can pass an attribute or something if you want to set an attribute before it clears the screen. All right, and then menu, yeah. And then it's subdirectory, and it's board M. I guess that's the main menu, board M. I guess that's what they named their main menu. And that's all for that condition, because we had an end if here. And then we're going to set our node action to node main. And again, you can probably find a lot of the similar code in here in this default shell. And again, we have it right here. And it calls node sync. It's probably something we want to do. Yep, we got async here, same thing. It basically checks for messages and for the node being interrupted, that kind of thing. So next we have a prompt. So it printed the file, the menu file, display file, whatever you want to call that, if the user was not in expert mode, and then it's giving them a prompt for them to enter a command. And it has at codes in it. There's multiple ways to output a string in JavaScript. Especially if from the terminal server, from a user being connected. So that was one of the reasons why I had that wiki page up here, was to show all the different output methods. So there's some that are just simple function call names, no object, no parent object as part of the global scope. Those are typically for like backwards compatibility. We probably want to use the console object as much as possible. So console print would work. It doesn't say it supports at codes. I believe it does, actually, if you pass a mode flag. Put message is sort of the granddaddy of all of them, supports all of them features you want. If you want at codes and extra attribute codes and stuff like that. Like extra attribute codes would be like a PCBoard attribute code. And we see we have at codes in the string here. So just to be safe, we'll start with that. We'll say console.putMessage. It's a prompt. It's not going to be super performance heavy, so it's probably just going to be just fine, just like that. And then we have another print command after, so we're also going to call that with console put message. You need the parentheses and the semicolons. In JavaScript, sometimes the semicolons are optional, but it's always good to include them anyway. And then we have getStir. GetStir, I think, is a console method as well. Console.getStir. And then we need to store the return value, the string that we got from it. So I'll just say, I'll call that command. It's actually, yeah, I'm not sure if they're going to call it stir in the script places, maybe, but we'll call it command. In Baja, there's sort of a global variable called stir, and it's just the latest string you got from the user, used everywhere. The default value, there is none. It's looking for a string. If it's a number argument, then it's the maximum length, and we're saying 60 is maximum length. That's probably okay. And then you can have mode flags like convert it to uppercase or strip white space, things like that. We're not going to start off specifying any mode flags because we didn't have any mode flags in the Baja version. So we're just kind of doing a one-to-one conversion as much as possible. All right, now it's checking to see if the string is blank. That's what it does. Compare stir to an empty string here in quotes. If it's true, then it just ends the command, which jumps right back. So in JavaScript, the easiest way is just say if not command and then continue. Just keep doing this loop. They basically, the user just hit enter, and so we don't need to bother trying to process that command. Okay, now we have a bunch of these command stir things. right? So each one of these blocks starts with a command stir and ends with the end command. And we can easily do that in JavaScript, or easier, I think, with a switch statement. Another way to do it would be table driven, like I did it in the default shell here. I use tables and data driven. And it's nice. It makes your code a little cleaner. You know, each of those case, or, you know, each one of these blocks, you know, command stir to end command, that whole block of whatever that is, 6 or 7 lines, could just be one line if you encode it in a table like this. I'm not going to start off like that just because it's not a direct one-to-one conversion of the code that way. I'll start it with, I think more closely would be like a switch statement. So we'll say switch command, and then for each of these command stirs, you'd say case, and then in quotes. And single or double quotes doesn't really matter. I tend to use single quotes for single letters because of my C heritage. And again, it's checking the expert flag, and we already know the better way to do that is this way, and it's saying if it's true in that case. So we would not use the not operator. We would say if it is expert. So that means they're in expert menu mode, they hit question mark, it means they forgot a menu key or something, and they want to see the menu again. And we're going to be doing these two things again. So replacing the CLS and the menu call for those two things. Indent. End command is just basically put it in braces. Sorry, curly braces like that. And then the case statement ends with a break, spelled correctly. And then my style is to indent the body of a case statement. So that's basically how we converted that command stir question mark into a single case block for a switch command. All right, we're going to do something similar with help. Now notice how it's uppercase here. This call to get stir was not uppercase. It didn't convert it to uppercase. So unless they typed help and all these are comparing uppercase. So that means it's really assuming it's uppercase. I don't remember that Baja did a conversion to uppercase, but I guess maybe it did. Let me see, get stir. So you could pass it a mode argument. Doesn't say anything about there being a default mode. And that's all what these K flags are. They're still used in Synchronet prolifically. K for keyboard input, basically. So I'm going to open the original. Commands. It's the command stir. That must be doing a case insensitive compare. That's why. See, command stir. Function is identical to command key with the exception of the argument. The C string is usually immediately preceded by get stir. It doesn't say so, but I'm pretty sure that is doing a case insensitive compare. And that's not going to work right here like this. So we would want to convert this to uppercase like this. And you cannot do that if, like say, if this get stir returned null or undefined, you cannot call to uppercase on it. So this not check would also eliminate those types. And then now we're at this point, we're assuming it's a string. It probably is. I don't know what else get stir would return that would pass a positive test or, you know, a non-negative check here and not be a string. So I think it's a safe assumption. And this to uppercase is going to allow us to have uppercase in all our case statements. Too many uses of the word case there. All right, and then this looks like it is doing exactly the same thing as this question mark block. And the way you do that with a switch statement is just have the two case statements next to each other like that. So there's no like extra help output. It's just the menu all over again. And look, we just saved, you know, another, 7 lines of code. File select area was a built-in function. Yeah, it's just a built-in function. It jumped to a thing that, you know, a function that allow you to choose the area, and then if they aborted it, it would turn false, or set the logic state to false, so this if true would not be met. But I think this is doing like a file listing. Yeah, because it calls file list as well. So here's where we're going to jump into the shell lib. So if you'll notice in the default shell, this is only 300, not even 300 lines, 260 lines. A lot of this logic and code is in a library that it loads called shell lib. And that's how it loads it. And it loads it into the shell object, and then we call functions in this code by prefix it with shell dot. So we're going to do the same thing. And we might end up copying some of these other includes as well if we need them. These require statements. Require is like load, except it's optimized. If you already have the symbol defined, you don't need to load the thing. So we could do the same with the SBBS defs. This load statement here could be a require statement. And might as well go ahead and do that while we're talking about it. Require, and I'm just looking, the first thing that requires it is user expert. So I'll just say, if user expert is defined, then we don't need SBBS defs. It's not quite accurate because SBBS defs includes user defs, and user defs is what defines user expert. But for now, this will work. Let me see here. It's possible that something else included user defs, but not SBBS defs, and then this code executed, and user expert was defined, but not the rest of the things from SBBS defs, and then you could get in trouble. So I'll just say user defs for now. A little more technically accurate. We'll probably need some other things from SBBS defs, though. So file select area, and this is now we're going to start taking a look at that library. So it's in load shell lib. And it's going to have a bunch of function definitions. So they bring them with the word function, and it's going to have something, we're looking for something that selects the file area. So it might have the word select in it. So select message area, show libs, show ders, select file area. Well, it looks just like it. And typically these were written to pretty much emulate what the built-in code was, the code written in C that was invoked by doing that Baja function. That's instead of exposing that as as a function that you call directly from JavaScript, we re-implement it in JavaScript so that you have more opportunity to customize, and eventually we can throw away all that built-in code in C and C++. It's just high-level user interface code. It might as well be written in JavaScript anyway. But for now, it still lives in two places, and it's basically mimicking the functionality of the built-in C code. But since it's in JavaScript, easier to modify. You don't have to compile anything. You don't have to worry about knowing a little more advanced language and possibly introducing a bug. Although bugs in JavaScript, certainly a thing. All right, I don't see it returning a value. All these return statements just return. There's no indication of whether there was success or not. And if you look in here, it checks to see, did the function return true? And we're not actually doing that here in shell lib. So, I mean, here this says, oh, there's no library, so that makes sense. You just abort. But it still probably should be returning a value. So I'm curious how we handle that scenario in the default shell. So select file area. File area. And it just selects it and doesn't do anything with the result. So I think what we're looking at here is a lacking functionality in shell lib. And that's kind of inevitable, right? We didn't need that facility with the return value to indicate, whether or not they aborted the file area selection. We didn't need that for the default shell because it just doesn't care. It just goes back to the prompt. Well, in PCBoard, let's go ahead and switch to the PCBoard. Oh, okay, good. All right, so you can, even though I have the JS file, I can force it to execute a Baja by specifying .bin. And this is the F key, and you see it chooses a menu area, and then if you abort it, it does nothing, I think, right? But if you don't abort, and you actually drill down, then it gives you a file listing. So it does need that return value to know whether or not you aborted the file selection. So we're going to go ahead and update this function, and we're going to make it return false for all the conditions where the user just aborted the list. And typically that's with like a -1 check here, console get num return -1. That means they hit Control C or Q, something like something for like an abort operation. And in this case, they aborted this, and we're also going to return false. This case would be return true, because that's, we're also setting the curlib and curdir when they do this. That's interesting. This is saying while you're online, and I don't think it breaks for any other reason. So that would mean you hung up, in which case we just want to return false. All right. So don't worry, you won't have to make these changes. I will be committing this code into the Git repo, and it'll be included in the next release. You can also download it yourself as an update. There's instructions on the wiki about how to update both runtime files as well as the executable binaries and kind of get up to the current development build status. But there is a new release imminent very soon now. 3.21 will be released, and it'll include these changes. Any changes I'm making to shell lib or any other shared JavaScript or other files, they'll be included, as well as I think this PCBoard.js that we're working on. All right, so now that we have that change made, we should be able to say if shell dot, and then again, what was the name of the function? Select file area. So not the exact ordering of, but we know it's the same function. It's got the same words in it. All right, then we're going to do these things. And this is set stir and then calling file list. And file list, I'm pretty sure that's just a built-in thing, list files. And it's normally going to list all the files. So we go to the JavaScript reference here, say list files. Yeah, by default, it's every file, right? That's the default file specification here. So we don't actually need to pass a star if we just want to show all the files. So we don't need to worry about setting string there. We will just call this list files, bbs.list files. And it's by default doing the current directory. And when we looked at shell lib select file area, we saw that it was setting the current library and directory. So that just should work. And that's really all we should need. The rest of this is just syntax. All right, what's this? Extended. So extended information on files. So case ext. So same thing. If the file selection was successful, the file area selection was successful, then we're going to want to list extended file info. And that's, I think right here, list file info. I think that's the same thing. List extended file information. So yeah, we want to call bbs.list file info. And then break. And you kind of get the pattern here, right? Changing these command strs to case, putting the word in quotes, follow up with a colon. Get file spec. So this is prompting for a file specification from the user. So, if they want to type, star.zip or, greatgame.star, whatever, file spec. I don't remember. Oh, there is bbs.get file spec. Oh, look, there's even a function here, view file info, and it does a prompt for us. Look at that. I wouldn't have known there's view files, view file info. All right, what's this do? View. It's file view. So I'm pretty sure that's file contents. Not information about the file, but the actual, like if it's a text file, it displays it. This function views the contents of the files that match the file spec. And that's what we want to do with the view command. And we have view, where was it? View files. And it does the prompt for us. So we'll just call shell view files. That's it. And then we have batch, file batch section. And that, I don't think that's in here. I think that batch file transfer module is a loadable module. It's been rewritten in JavaScript. It's configured in SCFG. So system loadable modules, and then batch transfer right there, and you have batch exfer. And you can have multiple of these now. They're selectable with access requirements. So you could have a RIP specific batch transfer menu, for example. But how you get there, and then I'm just going to cheat and look at the default shell, and it just calls BBS batch menu. And since in this shell, right, it's data, it's a table, these values get invoked, which sort of executes what's in quotes. We're not going to do that in our shell. We're just going to directly call it. So here, when you get the command batch, we're going to call that BBS batch menu, which I copy pasted from the other. That's it. Remove probably removes a file. So it's PCBoard looks very file centric. Like that main menu does a lot of file things. All right, again, it prompts for a file spec and then calls file remove. So I'm looking here for any remove stuff. I know that in the default shell, we have the R command removes a file. So this is how you do that. View file info, fi remove. And I think that, oh, shelf, view file, yeah, view file info. So that'll do the prompting for the file spec. We can confirm that by looking at view file info. And again, get file spec. So we don't need this logic here where it does get file spec. In Baja, we can just call that. All right. Now notice how it's passing fi remove. That stands for file information, and then we're going to do a remove operations. That's sort of our mode flag. And that's not going to be defined in user defs. We can look at, just to confirm, you could do a search, grep operation, whatever, but I'm pretty sure it's defined in here in SBBS defs. So fi remove, and there it is. So now we have our first sort of external dependency on SBBS defs for this fi remove numeric constant. So we're going to add another require statement up here. Doesn't really matter the order. And then, I don't know why I'm putting it in single quotes. It doesn't matter either. That could be double or single, either for both of those strings. But fi remove is in SBBS defs, and we need it, and that should do it for that operation. And then, let me see, we've got D for download, and it calls file download batch, and if that's true, then that's the end of the command. Otherwise, it then gets a file spec and calls file download. I think we have similar functionality in here. Shell download files. So it just calls download files. And in the shell download files, it checks the batch download queue, and then if there are files, it prompts and does that. So this is what we want to call. We want to call shell download files. Shell download files. No arguments. And that's it. All this goes away because it does the whole thing where it prompts. If there's nothing in the queue, then it just jumps straight here. There is stuff in the queue. It asks if you want to download what's in the queue. Otherwise, you're going to get a prompt. So now we've got this upload command. That's what U stands for, sort of, I'm guessing. Looks like it, right? And I don't think we need that check for the upload thing, that display file, right? Menu upload. %Z is, I think, stands for the text directory, I'm assuming. Makes sense. All right, upload. So I'm going to look in the shell lib for upload file. And look, it's doing that menu thing for us. And if it doesn't exist, it doesn't display an error. It's just an optional display file. That's what this P no error mode flag does for print functions. That's what the P stands for. And so we get that functionality automatically, and then it does, checking the current directory, and if you have an upload directory defined, and it's got cool logic in here. We want all this. So we're just going to call upload file from the shell library. So this is case U, and then shell.upload file. And delete a bunch of text. So this is getting smaller and smaller. All right, what's this? Find a file name, or file find name, right? In the default shell, that is this right here, S command, search for file names. So this is all we really need, is that right there. Now, FL no header, file list no header mode, right? That's also defined in SBBS defs.js, and we already have it as a requirement. We don't need multiple require statements. And this is a bug right here. So Haskell is missing the break statement. That means that when you hit the U command, it would fall through the L command, sort of like we did intentionally up here. This would be an accidental fall through, and that's a bug. So let's fix that. All right, what do we have here? New files. New file scan, and use last new for the new file scan, for new file scan date. What does that mean, to change it? I'm not really sure what that means. So let me see, if I hit N, use, and I see it outputs the date. Use that date, and it's just telling us what date we're using for new file scan date. And I say, so we do N and then A, or, I don't know how you change it. It's a yes, no prompt. Well, that doesn't seem to be working. I think the behavior of yes, no changed at some point, and now passing it a blank string just automatically would set Either yes, probably. I think that's what it's doing. It's just so yeah, this should have been like this whole thing in yes no like that. But maybe when I wrote this, like yes no didn't support @codes, something like that. And it's got a carriage from line feed that could be problematic. Yeah, this is not working as intended. I can tell. It's supposed to be prompting for yes or no. And yes, no means if you hit enter, the default is yes. There's no prompt. The prompt that it's giving me is just for the areas to search. That's a different prompt. That's happening in this new file, new scan here. It's asking me what sort of the scope of the scan for new files. So this is a bug. I guess it's probably been there for a long time. I'm guessing, originally it probably worked fine because yes, no did something different when you pass it a blank string. This is kind of a corner case. And for a long time now, I think yes, no has done something different. When you pass it a blank string, it doesn't prompt. So this is the prompt we want. And we're going to say if console, I think it's console yes, no, right? I think there's a yes, no function in here. Console. Yes, no. Yes, no? Yeah, console yes, no. No underscore. Yes, no. And then your question. Of course, you need parentheses. Let me see. Oh, so it's if false here again, right? So it's saying, they answered no. So we're going to say if not, yes, no. Then we want to prompt for we want them to be able to change the scan pointers. The default shell, it's the ampersand key followed by P. So ampersand P for file scan. So it's executing something called file scan config.js. This is another external dependency. And there it is. We'll open that up. And it gives us this little menu, and it has P, which calls BBS this function here. And we want to do all those things, right? So if it returned a non-null value, then we're going to set it. So basically need these 3 lines. And we're going to put that in here. So if not, then you're going to do this. And since we're pasting 3 lines, we need curly brackets. If it's 1 line, the brackets are optional. It's a good safe coding practice to always include brackets, but it makes your code a little bit bigger and longer, maybe harder to read, or easier to read, depending on your viewpoint. All right, so it's calling that function, storing it in val. If val is not null, then it assigns it to new file time. All right, and then no matter what, it always calls this file new scan, which we don't call file new scan, we call new file scan. Scanders based on upload time. So that's the syntax for doing a new file scan based on the upload time. So we're just going to put that in here. And then we don't need any of this now. All that Baja code goes away. Don't forget our break. All right. And then now we're going to go, file find text. So this is not finding a file name. It's finding text in the description of the file. And that is the F command in the built-in shell. And by default, so this one, so there's F and there's /F. F will prompt you for what scope you want to search. So I'm going to try to see what this does. So Z command, and it does prompt you for whether you want to search the directory, the library, or all. So we want that prompt to mimic the old behavior. So I'm just going to copy this part and not this one where it passes the all value of true. We're not going to do that. Case Z, colon, and that's the function, and then break. All right, now we've got T for temp file section. It gives you this temp file command. So case T. And again, that just invokes a loadable module pretty much, which is also written in JavaScript now these days. It used to be written in C++. And I'll show you where that is on the menu. That is under T for temp transfer. Yeah. And that comes with Synchronet now, right? You get that module. So how we invoke that here is just bbs.tempexfer. The X standing for transfer. All right. Plodding along. Case C. What's this? Comment to sysop, it looks like. feedback, mail send feedback, and it's assuming user number 1. How you do that, let me see, there's an email section menu, and it has a feedback command, as I recall. And you see here it calls BBS email, user 1, and it includes this string for the top of the message for feedback. So let's copy that part. So we're not going to actually jump to an email menu. We're going to go directly and invoke directly what that command is. It's just one line, so copying, pasting, one line, not a big deal. Now it does have a carriage turn line feed here. We could do that. That's console.newline, I think. Yep, console.newline. All right, and then we've got, now we're into message commands. It looks like that was a bunch of file related stuff. So we're starting at the message commands. We've got the feedback. Now we've got message your scan. So I think that's scanning for messages to you. And in Synchronet, that is what search for messages to you. That's this command here in the default shell, scan to you. So we just need to copy that bit right there. You see these extra bits in here where we've got, message definitions, and that's just so it outputs extra text telling you what it's about to do rather than just jumping off and doing the thing. It kind of warns you, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm scanning for messages posted to you. We could do the same thing with like a put message in the PCBoard shell. I'm not going to worry about that just yet because the Baja version didn't do that. It didn't output like those status messages. So we're not going to copy that. We're not going to make any improvements. We're just doing sort of as much as we can a one-for-one conversion. All right, message find text. That is what, the F command, I know. So scan find, and it does everything. So all areas, it doesn't ask you what areas. So it's going to be case TS. And then we're going to do that. And then we've got QWK. PCBoard was, I think, the first BBS to ever have QWK support. Quick packets, which are basically zipped data files that follow the PCBoard message base format at the time anyway, with some additional like indexing and other like control files and stuff. But the sort of main header and message body information, I think, is based on a PCBoard storage format. And then Mark Sparky created a door for PCBoard. His name was Mark. A tragic story if you want to read about that. Mark Herring. So yeah, we definitely want to have QWK support, and in Synchronet, that's just the Q command, and it goes BBS QWK sec. And that still is hard-coded in C++ today. Does not jump to a module, the Baja or JavaScript or any other. It's just built-in code. All right, auto message, that's now a loadable module. Again, I'll show that to you where that's configured in here. Auto message. Yeah, so that's in JavaScript. I think all these modules now are in JavaScript. Thankfully, eventually there will be no more Baja support. That will happen someday. And if somebody really, really wants some old Baja code to work, there's ways to convert it or interpret it in JavaScript. So it's not like, these old modules wouldn't work anymore. You'd have to go maybe through another hoop to make it work. All right. So how do you get to the auto message? Let me see. So you wouldn't want to like directly invoke auto message. Like you wouldn't want to use like bbs.exec. That would not be the correct way to do it. You want it to automatically pull whatever that module name happens to be. So there is bbs.automessage. This is the correct way to do it. All right. All right, new scan configuration. You have to type select 6 letters to configure your new scan. So I know in Synchronet, it's the ampersand from message scan. Again, that's another file, so not file scan config, but message scan config. And it has what this command here for configuring your new scan calls, anything that starts with BBS dot, that's a built-in JavaScript object, BBS is, and then, this constant comes out of sbbsdefs.js. All right, and then you've got message pointers config. Don't forget our break statements. All right. And message pointers config. Again, we can look at the message scan config. That's P right here. That's the command we want. This is the function call. All right. Reading messages. And I guess it's just reading the current area. Message read probably reads whatever is the currently selected message area. All right, we can confirm that by looking at message read. Read message from the current subboard. Okay. And we would do that with the R command also in default command shell. That's here. And we call it scan messages. I don't know why. No good reason. Again, that invokes, that'll automatically invoke a loadable module if you have one installed, like the digital distortion message reader by Nightfox is very popular. And it'll invoke that. If you don't have that installed or configured, then it'll do the built-in message reader stuff that's written in C++. All right, and then we have info system. And as we saw, that was not really like an interactive thing. So I know we have like info, just go shell main info, and it was not doing everything that's in that main info in shell lib. It was just doing like this part, this BBS sys info. That's what you want. All right. E is to, I guess, enter a message, and that's post. Post a message, which we call P for post. There you go. Again, don't forget your breaks, or anytime you hit S, it would also post a message. You know, that's not what you want. And now we got RN for a new scan. That's how you do a new scan for messages. And in Synchronet, that's N. Scan nubs new. And if you didn't want it to prompt for the breadth of the scan, you can skip that prompt, and you would do that with whatever was done by the /n. You'd pass the additional argument saying all is true. Now, we're not going to do that because that's not how the Baja shell worked. I would like to compare it to a PC board and make sure that it runs similarly, it executes similarly. But the main thing is that the command keys match up, the menus are familiar, and that a user who's been using PCBoard for a long time won't feel totally out of water on a Synchronet BBS as long as they can choose this shell. All right, message continuous scan. All right, that is what I think we call that a Z scan. Yeah, and it does everything, and it does it continuous. So yeah, I don't know if it does the all though. See, we had const scan here, and we had const scan all. See this? And we're not doing, we weren't calling all, it's just const scan. So I'm going to take this all true out. So it's going to prompt for the scope of the scan, whether you want to do just the subboard, the current group, or everything. All right, this one's pretty obvious. Join selects the message area. It's a J command in the default shell, and it calls the shell function called select message area. And it doesn't use the return value, so it doesn't care whether you selected one or not. Hit Q. For completeness, I'm going to go ahead and update that. We did the file area selection, so it returned false if they abort. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the same while I'm here, because it's free. At some point, somebody's going to want to know whether or not they aborted. This is the case where it returns true, and whoops. This is the case where it returns false still, because that just falls through, meaning they disconnected. And if it's join followed by a space, okay, so yeah, we'll need some special logic there to handle this, like shifting the word, and we'll just make this deal with later. So I'm just going to move this code down, because right now these are exact matches. You know, if they typed, auto space, it's not going to match here. It could, if we use the trim flag, it would automatically trim the white space off. It's probably a good idea. But right now, if you actually type one of these commands and then follow it with a space or any of the letters, it's not going to match. Because it's not doing it's not saying, oh, what's the first word? It's saying the entire string has to exactly match these things. And it is automatically converted to uppercase for us, so that's okay. But we're going to move this down here with all these other things that we have to deal with. But it can't be just a case statement like that unless we did some like word parsing and said, okay, just switch on the first word of the command. It's not a bad idea, but it's not what we have in the code right there. And it's not what the Baja version of this did. All right, so message select area. Well, look at that. It's the same thing. So we're just going to J and join are the same thing. So we're just going to get rid of that. And then, oh, we have the email sec. It's being called directly from exec bin. This is the old way of doing it. When we first converted this email section from C or C, then we went and updated all the shells to exec bin that Baja module. Now, of course, this is written in JavaScript. This still works, but it's not going to automatically invoke whatever happens to be configured in SCFG. So this is actually kind of a bug in the old module. Because look, we do have an email section, right? Don't we? We don't? Oh, I'm lying. We don't. We don't have an email section. So you can't just replace the email sec. I'm going to put that on the to-do list. That probably should just be a configurable loadable module so that if a third party had another email section, or if you wanted to have it conditional based on, whatever, you could have multiple email section modules. And in this case, it's just directly invoking it. Let me look and see what happens. Oh, look at that. It's just directly invoking it. So I would call that a to-do. That's a room for improvement there. The name of this is hard-coded. I mean, you put it in your mods directory. You have a modified version in your mods directory. That would work fine. But we really probably shouldn't be directly invoking things, especially stuff that is often customized. That we'll go ahead and do it the same way. So how we would do that, so exec, I think ends up being called with bbs.exec. js.exec? That's fine. And then it passes an object to it. So case M. And then the script is sec.js. All right. I think this is a good time to take a break. What I'm going to do is test this. So I'm going to comment out all the rest of this code. You can leave this bit in here. Uses an at code, so we'll go ahead and include that. And then end command just means it's the end of this loop that we're in. In theory, that should work. So let's try invoking it. Change your command shell, or you can just execute it like this. So semicolon exec PCBoard. It's going to execute the JavaScript one by default. And not surprisingly, there's a syntax error. You might have even caught it while I was typing it. Who knows? So go to line 246. This is it's at the end of the file. Okay, so the switch statement, I'm sure, yeah, it does not have a close. We needed a switch. Needed a closing. Yeah. So that's the whole switch block there. We'll end up moving that below these other conditions, but for now, we'll do that. Yeah, we have no way to log off or anything, or quit. So once we invoke this, it's going to be, we're going to have to disconnect. Okay. All right, it's displaying our display file. We've got a menu, we got an error. Menu is not defined, line 18. Okay, why is that menu.node action? Because we copy and pasted this from the other code, and that was, menu was like that table, and the node action we want is actually node main. We're at the main menu, so that's the action we want. So, yeah, we'll copy paste error there. Okay, look at that. Okay, no error, and then we should be able to do something like open. Oh, so you have to really. JavaScript doesn't test everything as you first compile it. You have to run and test everything. So put message, not post message. The other thing I didn't do was enable strict mode. So before in all your rest of your code, go ahead and put in use strict. And that'll catch some errors, like using undefined variables. All right, no errors. Okay, let me see. We got file directory. And then you have to choose the area, and it lists the files. Oh, and it's falling through to the invalid entry. So one way to invoke this, execute this whole switch command, and then it just sort of fell through down here to invalid entry. One thing we do is we put that in in a default clause of that switch statement. That would be one way, but there's going to be a lot of commands that are going to hit that because, we're going to have this case like with join space and then another word and maybe open space. Yeah, these other commands where you can, have a command followed by a word, like an argument. Those are all going to fall into the default case. So I don't know that's really what I want to do here. I think instead, rather than using break, I want to use continue. What that'll do is when it hits this command, this point, instead of breaking and then continuing on down in the code, it's going to go all the way back up to the top of the loop. So it's kind of like that end command instruction, keyword, whatever we called that in Baja. There was an end command thing that went back to the top of the loop. Well, that's what continue is going to do here. So rather than break, let's do a search replace. Those are all going to just continue. So we don't have to worry about reaching the bottom of this function and getting there. So like I said earlier, there's no way to get out of this. I can't even log off because I didn't implement the log off command yet. So I'll just hang out, log back in. All right, file directory, list the directory, and hit Q, it's done. If I did this and I just hit Q, it does nothing. It doesn't list any files. And that was because of that improvement we made to the select file area command that we needed up here. So if it returned false because we hit Q, then it did not execute list files. All right, we've got what command? We got ext for extended info, and that just gives us extended listing. We can go through and test all these commands, but ideally you would, because especially with JavaScript, it won't catch all the typos and stuff until you actually invoke everything. So batch takes us to the batch transfer menu. Remove should remove files. Cool. D to download. Yay. U to upload. We can do blind batch transfers. It was the temp directory. That works. There was C for comment to sysop. That works. Auto message, new scan, RN, all right. And M for the mail menu, okay, that works. So I think, like I said, this is a good stopping point. I think I covered everything. So, I did want to talk about a little bit about the menus here. So you see they're in a subdirectory of the text menu directory. There's only a couple menu files. There's the sort of main menu, board M, and then you had that welcome. That's it. So PCBoard did not have a lot of menu files, I guess, at least not in the sort of stock configuration. If you wanted to update or edit these, Pablo Draw would be recommended. There's others as Mobius and other editors, but I still like Pablo Draw. And if you just try to pull up like this ASC file, it's not going to know that it's Synchronet encoded with Control-A codes. And so if you just pull it up by itself, it's going to, display these as happy faces, and it's not color encoded. So you have to tell it, you have to tell Pablo Draw that it's Control-A format. So down here, Control-A, and it says MSG or ASC, but if it's an ASC file, it just doesn't do it automatically. If you name the file MSG, it does automatically. So that's one of the reasons why I prefer naming menu files MSG. It just makes it one less thing that you have to do in Pablo Draw when editing. And if you want to edit, click edit, and then just change that 2 to a 3. Oh, there we go. And then we could use an @ code here. That'd probably be better rather than the space for rent. I think maybe at the time I didn't support formatting where you could, put the sysop's name in there with a fixed width. So we'll look at the @ code reference. Messenger @ codes, and then just like sysop. It's probably something like sysop, yes. Name of system operator. Different ways to specify the width, a fixed width. You can do it with just padding characters, or you can do it with like a length specifier. If you're doing it visually, a lot of times the padding is kind of the best way to do it. And then say @sysop, and then I think it's pipe, and then just some kind of space character, something to fill the space basically. I want to save it as MSG. So we don't have that issue with the file name in the future. MSG. And we'll know we touched it because that version number will change from 2 to 3. Exec, PCBoard. PCI, yeah, it did version 3, and then Yeah, we're getting some hiccups with the background colors. I think it's because it scrolled, because it didn't clear the screen first. But I think if you have a clear screen first, that's not a problem because it's not going to scroll. So right here, so we'll say console.clear, and then we're not going to have. I think that's going to solve that issue with the basically the bleeding of the background colors. Yeah. But you see here, it did not do the padding the way we wanted. That's because I failed to do this correctly. I think this is supposed to be pipe, and then you say left justified, like that. And then Control S to save. Ta-da! All right, so now your sysop is digital man. The box is obviously much bigger than you need for a short name like that, but it still works. Really going with like the PCBoard theme, ideally this file would be encoded in PCBoard color codes, not Control-A codes. The end user can't tell the difference, right? Because it's translated to ANSI or PETSCII as it's sent to the user, or it's stripped out if it's going to a like dumb terminal. Pablo Draw does not support PCBoard color codes. There's conversion tools, I'm sure, if you really wanted to do it. But it would be a nice feature for Pablo Draw to go ahead and support PCBoard, Wildcat, Renegade, Celerity, all those crazy color codes, WWIV. It's nice they support Synchronet. I do appreciate that. But it'd be cool if they supported some of those other older BBS programs, color encoding. And other ways to do at codes too, like, clear screen codes and stuff. It seems to be missing some things that sysops would appreciate. But still, enjoy using it. I'm glad there's a modern tool, more than one, for doing ANSI editing. After a meal and another hour or so of testing, this is where I've ended up. So let me see. We were displaying the welcome page every time the script ran, but when you go to the settings menu, which is what W in the PCBoard shell here, and you quit, then it like re-invokes the shell. So it's displaying this welcome page every time. By checking this main commands counter, that allows us to just ensure that it was only displayed once. And we're incrementing this main commands in this command loop. And that's just a simple like global variable that keeps track of all the number of commands that were invoked from the main menu of the BBS. And PCBoard, at least in this command shell, that's the only menu really, primary menu. There's no like separate message or file menu. The other thing I did was enable the trim mode, so automatically trimming off the trailing white space, combined the prompt together, and set the save ATR, that's save attributes, so the attributes that's set by this command will remain in place. That's required for put message. Print function, console.print, does not have that issue where it tries to restore the previous attribute before the function was called. And so if you do this psave attribute, then it saves whatever was set. It should be more like retain, I don't know, but that's what it does. And then logging the command, of course, so you get it in your system activity log, whatever commands they type. I already mentioned we're incrementing the main commands counter. I'm splitting the command word into words and just using the first word in the switch statement. So now, like the join command, like in the Baja version, there was a separate join and join space and user space. You don't need that now. Because like we just go to join, and then we check and see if there was an argument. Argument is the second word, if there is one. That's what this is, word 1. Arrays or index starting at 0, so that's the second word, if there is one. And it'll use that as the internal code of the message area to switch to if it exists and the user has access. Of course, they have to know the internal code of the message area, so it's a little dubious. Similar thing with the open and door command. The O command, yeah, that's paging the sysop. Let me see. Yeah, most of these were very straightforward. I can't really think of too much that was special here. This was a little unusual. The news displaying the logon message. That'd probably be bulletins or something like that, but that's what the other shell did. And nowadays, the stock logon screens are called random something. So a lot of times by stock there is no news file, right? Let me see. And then the user command that also uses the argument and just verifies the user exists. This should probably be using a macro or of a constant rather than this 25 here, hard-coded 25. So I'm going to look at SBBS defs, and then we have len alias, I think it is. And yep, it's set to 25. Now, this is unlikely to change, but still, it's a good idea to not hard code magic numbers all around. So that's an improvement there. The other script did not have was calling stir commands for additional string commands. And those are commands, they can either be entered directly. I didn't want to do that because I wanted to have this, invalid message, invalid entry message. This at least allows us some way to get to these string commands that are shared among several shells. So if you type like semicolon help, then you get all the help for that, which is different than typing help, which just displays the main menu. But then you have all those commands available, especially as a sysop. There's a lot of commands here, and they're very helpful for testing things, debugging things. I can evaluate parameters. I can BBS compare ARS sysop. True, I'm a sysop. Things like that, or echo. You can test like control A codes and stuff. Who's the sysop? Digital man. All right. Anyway, this now has that functionality, right? Semicolon, and you get those commands. It's not listed on the menu here, but I noticed there's other commands that are not listed on the menu either, like the who command. I don't see it here. Nodes, not there. But, I don't know. I don't know if those actually supported in PCBoard or those were afterthoughts that are Synchronet specific. Private node message, that works. Initial. That's kind of an interesting feature. I don't think any other shells have this, where you can go back and show the answer file. I think that's it. So the total shell here now is what? Barely 200 lines, like 201 lines. And then the Baja version was 300 lines. So it's 1/3 shorter. It has more functionality. It's better written. It's in a modern language. It's better in every way. It probably doesn't perform any faster. It's hard to get faster than Baja, but yeah, it performs plenty fast, and it has all the features and functions. So this, along with the other changes we made, like the shell lib and the menu files, I'll be committing those to Git. But I just wanted to follow up, and yeah, all done with this shell. So ready to do some more shells. You guys can do some more shells. Do some of the stock ones, please. Submit them. I'd be happy to commit them and merge them. And yeah, let's try to get rid of as much of that Baja code as possible. So thank you for sticking around, and we'll talk next time.